Okay, meeting is started. Thanks everybody for coming. October 21st. We have a full agenda. We have some special things happening tonight. Very auspicious, maybe about 3 of them. And I'd like to just say a couple things, and one of those auspicious things happens to be a guest that we have here this evening from the village of Martin's Addition, the town manager, James Gaston. Did I say that right, James? Okay. We're welcoming James. He is new to, I think, the county area of...
No, I'm native Washingtonian.
Right.
I've lived in several cities, but I'm now back here.
Okay, great. And you're visiting several of the municipalities' town council meetings?
One more to go.
One more to go. Thank you. So we're honored to have you here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. 2 more things I want to mention. On December 16th, here in the town hall, do we have a time? We don't, right? We will be hosting the District 18 meeting. And I'm told it will start at 7 o'clock here in the town hall on December 16th. So everybody's welcome to come. Sometimes there's a Q&A. We don't know the agenda yet, but just be aware we'll be having that here, and you're all welcome to attend.
Light refreshments.
And light refreshments. Well, we'll see what those are.
What time is that, Mark?
It'll be at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And this is part of the Maryland Municipal League county chapter. Okay, so we'll have possibly some other local government mayors here too, and town managers and so forth. Lastly, I just want to mention the Strathmore Sidewalk Field Walk. We heard back from District 18 Jared Solomon office, and they're trying to coordinate a time with the State Highway. If you remember, State Highway did reply to that letter in which we had District 18 legislators and county support the efforts of the multiple communities here on Strathmore for a sidewalk. And State Highway replied, said they weren't able to do something at that moment when we thought there was a good moment to do it because of the work they're currently doing on the storm drainage areas along Strathmore. But they said they would come back this fall and do a field walk with interested, residents of all the communities. So we're looking at, they had a very small window, and so we're looking at the 6th or the 7th of November or the 20th and 21st. That's all we know now. So we'll let you know if any of those dates work or if we have to come back and circle back with everybody in case you're all interested in attending. We're looking at an afternoon time frame when they would do this with us. Okay, that's all I have. So we'll move to the agenda. Is that okay? Shall I go ahead?
Keep going.
Okay. All right. Before we have an approval of the agenda, Town Manager Fox and I would like to have a change to the agenda, and if anybody else has a change as well. We'd like to include another action item that involves council's approval, voting approval for Andrea and I to sign the 2 contracts for the Safe Routes to School project. One is with the construction contractor, Patriot, and the other one is for the field inspector contract with Hyatt Brown. And we had to have both of those with the State Highways agreement. So I'd like to add those to the agenda under the action item. Is there anybody else who has any changes to the, Anybody else who has any changes to the agenda?
I propose that since Mayor Kaki already gave us the update on the Strathmore sidewalk field walk, to the extent that we have information, that we don't need it as a further item of discussion under business.
Okay, with those two changes on the agenda, would you like to approve the agenda with those
Yes.
changes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Unanimous?
Aye, yeah.
Okay.
There, stop.
Okay. Are there any changes to the minutes? This is approval of the minutes on the agenda.
None for me.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved. Okay. Any presentations by residents? Okay, moving on. We have an action item. The first action item is the appointment to the Arboretum Committee of 3 members, Michael Spector, Kathy Benjamin, Jim Sullivan. And I would like to just give a brief update on where we were last on this, about what members were still active, what their expiration term dates were. I met with council member Jane McClintock and the chair of the Arboretum Committee, Mike Spector, to go over our research that we found. Was this handed out? I just don't know. Was that handed out? Is this handed out to everybody? Okay. Well, what I wanted, okay. So you all have that spreadsheet, and on the other side, other page, is sort of the committee appointments from 2014 to 2019. It's sort of a narrative form, and of course, the very last little paragraph on there is what we're going to be doing tonight. And on the back of that is the response that we received from Jim Sullivan for his interest in serving on the Arboretum Committee. So let me tell you, as brief as I can, we had a lot of people, a lot of members coming on and off the Arboretum Committee up through basically 2017. There were several appointments that were made between 2014, 2015, 2016, and 17, and lots of people were also quitting. What we found out in the ordinance, or is it in the charter? The ordinance is that the way this is supposed to work, and I saw that it also works for archives, but I didn't check the Historic Preservation Committee Act provision, is that when members resign early, ahead of their term, that the mayor is allowed to make an administrative appointment for someone, pick someone to fill out the remaining term. I confess I didn't even know that back when Andrew Fiddler, our Charlie Andrews were appointed under my term of mayor, and it wasn't done in the previous years either. So we are going to be more mindful of that. There's another part of the ordinance that states no members more than two. It precludes more than two members retiring at the same time from a committee. So you can have up to two members retiring at the same time, but no more than that. And what we were finding out with 2019 was going to be a year where a lot of people were supposed to be expiring, their terms were ending. So, what we've all agreed to.
Should we abandon the audio speaker?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry? Where's the,
I don't, oh, that's working. You're looking at the.
It's totally fine. We could just.
Well, speak up.
no.
All right.
It's so we know who's it. I know.
All right, I'm sorry, Phil.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you doing something? No, because I was actually just going to move on now and say what Michael Spector and Councilwoman Jane agreed to was from 2017 on, we will keep the term appointments from those points of time that members were appointed, regardless of whether they were backfilling any previous members, because it just got real messy. So Michael, his term would be ending, but he's agreed to stay on for 6 months. So I will have to be appointing Michael to a 6-month term. And the reason why is that helps to establish this more random expiration of terms. Because otherwise, we don't want people just backfilling you, because then we go back to the same problem we've had with everybody leaving at the same time. Kathy Benjamin has agreed to serve for 1 more year. Her term was expiring. So I will be appointing her with council approval, of course. And Jim Sullivan, who has expressed interest, will be appointed with council approval tonight for the 5-year term. So unless you all have any questions or want to discuss this, I'd like to put this up for motion. Everybody, Jane, would you like to you want to say anything, or?
Well, just briefly, I really appreciate Mayor Kaki and Manager Fox doing the forensic investigation work to rationalize this, and I've suggested that this be put up on the Arboretum Committee website, and in your copious free time, I'm sure you're going to do the same forensic investigations for the other charter committees, just so that everyone has a better sense of what seats are coming open, and therefore what volunteer positions there might be to be filled. So I really appreciate the rationalization of this process. Do any of my fellow council members have any questions or comments?
Just like comments, food for thought on this, but what I've suggested to the Historic Preservation Committee we're thinking about working on is to make a real set of minutes and an agenda each meeting, and then put this information right at the top of the list. So you could say, these are all the members, this is what their start date was, and then you could do the math and then know what it is. Then we wouldn't really have to go through and do this. Like, we could do that for all the committees, and it would just make it simpler any resident that wants to read the minutes and find out what's going on, they can know, hey, that next year that there's something coming up.
No, I think that's a good idea, but I also, I mean, we don't have a whole bunch of information on our committee pages anyway. We could just
Yeah.
put their names
That
and,
could be
you
that
know.
too, yeah.
So, anyway, I just wanted to express that I appreciate this effort that went into this because it definitely was like CSI Garrett Park.
Thank you very much.
So,
And my thanks to the office staff for digging up the files and helping us collate all this stuff.
I don't think this requires a motion because this is you recommending and us voting to approve. So,
Yeah.
back to you.
Okay, so I would like to appoint Mike Spector for 6 months, Kathy Benjamin for 1 year, and Jim Sullivan for a full 5-year term.
All in favor?
Okay with me?
Aye.
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 Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, guess this, yeah. Next on the agenda under action items is the introduction of the ordinance to reflect additional 100% SHA funded grant modification. If you remember, we had a holding spot on the budget for 132,000 back in April before we went out for bid, because that's where we thought we had to be with the numbers. And so what would be reflected here is the difference. Did I say 132? It's not showing there. Yes. Is that the same as that? Yeah, but we would want it on the revenue side too. Okay. So if I could just steer you over to the capital budget account page, which is the last page with the ordinance on the front. The very last page is the capital budget account. You'll see that we had initially 132,782. That was to get the invitation for bid placed with having dollars to support that. Since we now have the lowest bid approved and now we're hoping to sign, the difference of that was 71,954 in the latest mod from the state highway, for a total of 204,736. So that's the change on this budget table that we wanted the council to see and to be able to approve. We needed that because we'll get to the next action item, but unless you want me to read this ordinance, or if you want to take a moment to read the ordinance. We also wanted you all to know that where the council had previously approved 40,000 of town funds to cover the potential shortfall, and this again goes back to early April when we were getting ready to advertise the invitation for bid for construction. We are now, by agreement with SHA, committing the full 40,000. We had split it as a possible reserve, so forth, but now part of this 100% funding, and it's 100% funding because SHA will spend all of that first before we have to dip into anything that we do with 40,000. But to cover the total cost, the total project cost, we have to be able to use the 40,000 as well. So it's a committed 40,000 now. And that's basically what the ordinance says. So if you are,
This was the thing where they had a max number that they were gonna commit to, and then it just happened to be a round number that was 40,000. It wasn't the percentage anymore.
yeah, that was way back when we were doing an 80-20 split.
This was after that.
But that 20 split was basically the 40,000.
Yeah, they just did it
And
a different way.
we held the feet to the fire and said, we're not going over 40. So they have funded the rest of this project, as long as we commit to using all the 40. And so we have a mod that we have signed. Okay, is there any other discussion? Otherwise, could we have a motion?
I move we adopt.
It's an introduction.
I move that
Introduction.
we- I'm sorry, I move that we introduce this for next council meeting.
Second? Second by Stephen. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and third item added to the agenda tonight is a council vote on entering into contracts with Patriot, the construction contractor for Safe Routes to School, and with Hyatt Brown, the field inspection services contract, also for Safe Routes to School, who will be representing the town's perspective. They're representing the town. Let me pull that up. And I believe Andrea has been in touch with council members about where we are with the amounts or anything. Do we? So,
Yeah, I mean, they haven't changed since the bids, since the bids came in.
okay,
So,
all right. So,
information from-
Yeah, so there hasn't been another document since then.
pardon me?
I
So,
don't think that, we've not seen another document since then, at least I haven't.
right, we just got the signed contract
Yeah,
today from Patriot. So, let me find. Patriot became the lowest bidder, and my thanks to all council members in helping us to justify that. And you may recall, and I'm going off the top of my head here, it's 872. I'm looking for the, is it 892? Hold on, I got Hyatt Brown in front of me, I'm sorry. Hyatt Brown. I'm looking for the, Elizabeth, I'm looking for the contract from Patriot. Yes,
Is there a separate page with the numbers?
that was all together with a paper clip. Let me see.
But Khaki, you just need a motion from us to move forward signing it, and it's the same thing that we all know what it
It's the
is.
same dollar amounts.
Yes,
from-
I was gonna tell you what that was, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We already saw it.
All right, so, and then Hyatt Brown,
And the
we're,
town attorney has reviewed the contracts.
thank you, yeah. And-
For both of them.
I think it's been a long time coming. I would move expeditiously at this point.
Okay,
Just tell me what you need.
all right,
Well,
well,
let me ask you one question
Yes.
before we move for a second.
okay.
Just a point of whatever, order, whatever. Can you sign it before we voted for the ordinance? Because you don't technically have the money. I mean, I hate to be a stick in the mud here. I mean, I'm fine with you signing it, but
Do you want to have an emergency,
No, we have the money that's obligated to them through SHA. Patriot.
we do, yeah, all this is doing is reflecting the financial assistance that we've already, thank you, Hans, that we've received from State Highway. We have a signed modification already with them by your approval. We signed that. So you're right. So the only difference really is the 40,000, which actually isn't reflected at this level in the ordinance anyway,
And we already
that you just
committed that
approved.
by
Yeah.
ordinance.
So, while it's showing that we've got the full 204,000 to make up the total project cost, we actually have the modification, grant modification, we have received that. So it is it's, you know, splitting the hairs on this one.
The money's in the bank, right? I mean, theoretically speaking, it's really, we're amending the budget by ordinance to reflect
the modification
that
has been signed.
approved.
Okay.
Yeah, is that okay
And the
with you?
change that SHA has made.
Right, we're not
Yes.
committing money that we don't have, because
Right.
Right. We're not changing anything about that.
They've already,
they've already agreed to do
And
that.
it's
Agreed.
financial
Okay, so then-
assistance, right. Although,
so then we're-
you know, we do spend and then they reimburse.
Right. but
Could I
still,
ask,
we get that.
would you all like to just have, move that up to an emergency adoption
Emergency adoption.
Of the
of
order.
the
if
ordinance?
you've got the signed committal letters, is what you're saying.
I don't think we're in any kind of
Then
anti-deficiency
we're-
situation, because we're not committing money that we don't have. We're just making sure it shows up in our
In your
accounting.
budget?
We're not
I'd be
committing
happy
money.
to do it as an emergency if it would make people feel more comfortable, but we already have their signature saying we're giving it to you. So we're not,
Yeah, just do, we don't, I don't think
No,
that you
it
need
makes me,
that
it
step.
would make me feel more comfortable, and the reason why is because if work starts beginning of November, and we start getting an invoice, now, I don't know if our first invoice might not be till the end of November
We'll have, you know, typically we'd have time, like 30 days or whatever, to pay
to
it.
pay it.
And that was that way with the street project too, with the
Okay.
larger project. So I think the issue would be if we have the full project cost, I think, is $1,016,000, right? But that includes the 40. So that minus.
No, it's 156,
That's what it is.
1,156.
1,016,000 minus the 70.
71,900.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
If
yeah.
we got it to that before the November meeting, we might have a problem. But I don't think it
Who
would be
would
an
possibly
issue.
spend that much? Right.
The speed of the construction and the speed of billing.
Okay, so the way you can look at it this way then is, because there were a lot of other little changes in the total project cost. It wasn't just the contractor, Patriot, accommodating that. So we probably have enough for that. There were other spikes, other increases in the total cost that are not part of construction, but overhead and, you know, other stuff.
Okay,
Build that in.
Still covers that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
With that, and the 132 already in there, if we're, you know, yeah.
We're not talking about new money that we're adding to the project. It's
No.
Things we've already.
Right, that's-
reversed.
And things that the state has committed to give to us that we're now
Right.
reflecting in our budget, but for all intents and purposes are ours because they've signed that commitment.
You would have to be breaking construction records to be able to ask for 100% invoices by January, let alone November. so.
Right.
Okay, great. All right, so is there a motion to allow the town to go enter into these two contracts and for Andrea and I to sign them?
I would like, is it possible to get a copy of the contracts to skim? I mean, I'm happy to go forward with this, but I would just like to just skim through it, given the fact that I spent a lot of time on the design phase and all that.
Oh, okay, here.
I'll just pick it up in
mine.
the office tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, but is that going to preclude you from
No,
voting?
no,
Oh,
I just-
okay, yeah, sure,
And just to say again, the town attorney has reviewed this.
yes, he's reviewed both,
Okay.
and, yeah, we.
And were there any modifications
There
that were made
There were
as
some
a result
changes,
of his?
we struck language
The
that,
state had us use their template.
yeah, we had to include some federal provisions in the contract, the Hyatt Brown, and there was very little for the,
We use Ron's template.
for the construction contract, yeah.
And there was both sides meeting of the minds.
Oh,
and
yeah.
No further revisions.
Oh, no, we,
Okay.
that all got,
All right.
that took, 10 days of effort, Andrea staying on top of it, but we got it done. So I asked if there's a motion.
I'll submit a motion that the town council approve the town manager and mayor entering into the construction contract with Patriot, as well as the field inspector contract with Hyatt Brown.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. That is a milestone. And I would like to take this moment, if you all don't mind, for Andrea and I to sign it in plain view of everybody. If I can just find the different contract. This is Hyatt Brown's, and
Do we all get a pen?
I have a pen.
Are you gonna sign, like, it's gonna be a presidential signing pen?
Yeah, well, here it is. It's Stop the Spot. Yeah, there you go.
Multiple pens for the signature?
Gosh, I can't. It's just not looking right.
After it's signed, don't forget to do this.
Oh, okay.
That's the current one.
I don't know.
Here's Patriot, and here's the signature line for Patriot. It's gonna have to be sealed. Here, that's the Patriot contract, that's the signature. But I think you're the.
Well, Andrea and I both sign it,
Okay.
and I just
Pen.
don't know how it comes in here. Yes, that's what we can.
I'm celebrating.
Okay.
I'm going for it. My dessert tonight.
Do you have a moped that you
All right, Jane, you want to be a witness?
Are we
Okay. No, oh, yeah. Well, no, we don't notarize. Yeah, we just do the seal after. It's okay.
training or something like that?
Okay. Oh, you got any different ones?
Do I? Yeah. You mean,
Oh,
am
really?
I gonna work this off? Is that you're gonna?
Today
Yeah,
is
I'll work it off in the morning.
Go ahead.
We should have champagne for the signing, but
We
the least I
did.
can do is have some
We
chocolate.
do, afterwards.
Is that Dr.?
I'll make that, here we go, Jay.
It is dark.
And then,
Go on, Hans,
I
treat
don't
yourself.
see where this goes here.
I walked by there, I can do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not.
Chapter, I'm just gonna say mayor.
I just had a physical.
And, we should have a
Way
date,
different books.
also.
Peachy key, and so I don't want to screw it up.
What are you saying?
There you go.
Nothing.
Page number on this.
Try to rationalize my abstention. That's all.
We all have to find our motivation
Front
somewhere.
page of that. Yes, I think it goes with more stuff, that's the problem. Okay. Thank you, there, I was like, where? All right, let's put this under here, but I'm going to take,
I'll come by in the morning sometime and pick one up.
yeah, we'll
Or
have,
maybe actually-
we'll have the
maybe-
pages
maybe in the
figured out
afternoon.
by then. Great. All right. Okay, I'd like to show we have signed contracts
Where's the camera?
for Safe Routes to School sidewalk project. And if you have any time after the adjournment of this meeting, we have just little cups of celebratory drink in recognition. And again, I'd like to thank all council members for their extraordinary help, really, on helping us to get to this point, and the efforts they put in to help us get to the lowest bidder and all that. Really appreciate it. And to Andrea and the office staff as well. And also to the Sidewalk Advisory Committee and other residents who were actively involved with this decision and the process of getting it moved forward. I'd like to thank everybody for that, too. And Dick Pratt, sitting here. And your special attention to detail. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dick. Let me get back to our agenda. Yes, right?
New business.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the next new business item is a status of 11112 Kenilworth and code enforcement. I know a lot of folks have had questions about what's happening with that property. Just wanted to review what's going on there, so I'll start with a little bit of timeline. The town office contacted the county Department of Permitting Services in April 2019, and we reached out to the county for reasons that I'll explain in a minute. In July, county inspector visited the property and issued a notice of violation, that there are permitting issues with the open windows in a ditch. In August, improvements were made, but it wasn't sufficient enough to ensure safety, so a citation was issued. The citation begins the court process, and if there's no compliance, the case will appear on the court docket in district court in 2 to 3 months. So right now, we are waiting to hear when it will be on the docket.
Because
So they're in
they did
violation
not,
of what?
This is the permit violation. So
Okay,
this is
okay.
the open windows
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
ditch.
yeah.
In a parallel process, the town office contacted the County Department of Housing and Community Affairs about the long grass in
Right,
early
right,
October.
right,
I didn't
right.
realize this was a separate,
Yep.
separate issue, so this is a learning curve for me. The county issued a letter and the property owner had 10 days to comply. They have not, so town office contacted the Department of Housing again a couple weeks later, 10 days later, and DHCA will be in touch with us about further actions in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So I don't have any finite answers other than we're part of the county process right now, which leads to sort of the larger discussion on code enforcement, that if you look in our code, there's some references to what we all sort of think of as code enforcement, but it's lacking in both the issues that are addressed and the town's ability to enforce them
So no
ourselves.
authority.
Yeah, yep. The town
Typical.
code, for example, doesn't give the authority to issue fines. Right now, we send a letter, and we hope that homeowners comply, and in some cases they do. But when that doesn't work, we appeal to the county for help. The county process takes time, obviously it takes months to work through. Our contract attorney, Ron Bolt, is aware of our code enforcement challenges since I've been asking him about them. And he recommended that we amend the code to allow the town to what's called clean and lien. So the town could clean up or hire someone to clean up the property, and then bill the property owner. If they don't pay, we then put a lien on their home. But right now, we're basically asking the county to do this for us, which is why it's taking so long, because we're going through their process. Ron also recommended that we may want to expand health and housing regulations that are addressed within the code. So raising this issue to open the discussion, it's not just isolated to 11112 Kenilworth. There's actually a few issues I'm working on right now, but that's obviously the most noticeable one.
you mean in town?
In town, yeah. That's
Other-
obviously the most noticeable one,
Mhm.
yeah. So the issue is both with what is currently is and is not in the code, but then also the town's ability to enforce the code violations ourselves versus relying on the county.
Well, I was going to say, we'll say that at least on one of those, which I happen to be somewhat familiar with, it required the county police to be present to assist, in addition to all the work to obviously get somebody there and to have them then go ahead and do it and then apply a lien if necessary. I don't know if that happened or not. So I guess the thing would be, are we equipped to do that?
I think that, from my understanding, I think we'd still be able to request the county's support, but if we have something like clean and lean within our code, it also gives us the authority to do that. So right now, in our code in section 109, we don't exempt ourselves from the county's housing and building maintenance standards. I think we would want to keep that. We would still not want to exempt ourselves from that, and also have something in our code.
Okay, and then, do we have to fill in anything behind? In other words, who's going to make the judgment, or who's going to, what are you proposing? I mean, do we need to do a study first, I assume, and then we're going to come back with some
Yeah,
proposals?
I think it needs some, attention if it's going to be an amendment to the code or adding language to the code. But I just wanted to sort of bring it up here as a sort of general issue that I've been up against with a few different properties. And in a couple cases, like Kenilworth, it would be really helpful to be able to, even the mowing, for example, maybe we'd still rely on the county to help with the permitting, challenges, but maybe we could hire a landscape company to come out and get a big riding mower and take care of it, and at least that wouldn't be as much of a challenge.
Do we need to have a lean and, a clean and lean provision before we can do that?
Yep, so right now,
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what Ron said, but right now, we wouldn't want to do anything like that without approval from the courts. And especially without something in our code that gives us kind of the authority to be able to do that.
And if we had the code shortly now, we'd be able to act on that without having to wait for the county?
Yeah, and right now, too, we don't even have the ability to fine related to
Right.
this type of code violation, where there's other code violations that we have fines. I don't know how often we've used them, but there's just not a lot that we can do. We're sort of really reliant on the county right now. There's not really anything in between.
Looping back to this particular property, so the, essentially the notice of violation that's proceeding to the courts right now is for the unsafe worksite conditions. So what's the ultimate relief that we're seeking, a fine, or is there further enforcement? I mean, I don't see anyone on that site. I don't live on that side, but when I go over there, I don't see anyone working, so it doesn't seem like a stop work order is gonna do anything. But is there, whether it's in this process or a further process, any leverage the town has?
Right.
Or are we just limited
I think
overall in what we can do?
I think with the Department of Permitting Services, they're just responding to permitting-related issues.
Mhm.
If someone asks them about the grass, you gotta talk to the housing
Right.
folks about that. So my understanding is it's just related to the open windows in the ditch, so the safety issues and having those safety issues addressed in
Right.
a way that the county finds satisfies that.
Mhm.
There was something also that town assistant Elizabeth Henley had talked to the county about, and had said something about building permits are for only a certain amount of time, so they've got to be close to coming up on the amount of time where their permit would no longer be valid as well in the county, so I'm assuming that when there's a court date set, that we would learn more kind of at the court date. That's sort of limited information I have from it. I
And
didn't
the,
see anything online related to the deed changing hands.
so are there not two different actions going through the county right now? One from the housing division with the long grass, and I want to get back to that, and the second one is on the permitting,
Yep,
right?
that's right.
So on the first one with the long grass, does the housing division, it's not just about long grass, it's about stuff all over somebody's yard?
Yeah, it could be health and safety
Okay.
related issues.
Okay.
For that particular property, so there's basically when you go into the 311 system and you go to make a complaint, and you go into the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, there's a drop-down menu, and one of the drop-down menu options is long grass. And so, there's various things that could be related to a complaint for that department.
Okay.
So did you just want to gauge tonight if we're in support of clean and lean, and then if so, because
Yeah.
certainly I am, and then you'll come back to, presuming that the council is, then you'll come back to us with a proposal of what's that mechanism of how we would then evaluate each situation?
Well, Andrea and I were talking about this, and, with the Safe Routes to School taking front and center on our time and effort, we were wondering if there was anybody on the council who would like to take a stab at drafting, an amendment to the ordinance to include this as a provision.
Well, I'm not volunteering for obvious reasons, but I think it would be a useful exercise, as with the traffic and parking ordinance, to go through and identify essentially, what needs this kind of enforcement hook behind it, and rationalize that. And, longer term, is it possible, I mean, not that it's worked out very well so far, but is it possible to enter into the county with the same kind of agreement to enforce that, we've been so successful on the traffic and parking? But, since we've already got that process underway, is it possible to, rationalize to say, here's what we're gonna enforce on our own authority, and here's how we're gonna be able to refer out when we need to?
I mean-
Or is that not necessary because the default is we'll refer out and they're already gonna take care of it through their permitting system?
You mean the counties?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
So,
what
but
we
we
did
have our
with-
own permit system and we have the county permit system, so there's like a
Yeah, but the
parallel.
enforcement piece would be done by hand by the county, just as we did with the parking.
Well, but, you know, is there a part that needs to come back and, you know, I'm just saying, it needs, I don't think it needs just one piece, I think it needs a review to say what pieces,
agree.
parts
Yeah.
need to be fed into whatever overlay of enforcement system
I would
is
agree.
appropriate here.
What,
You gotta kind of define the whole problem. There's gonna be a bunch of, everything from
Yeah.
enforcement to judgment to who's, to exactly what our code's gonna be.
but I mean, Andrew, why can't we just ask some of the other local towns around here? I would think most jurisdictions have clean and lean, right? It's a relatively common approach.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Ron sent me an example that was actually in Martin's Editions that happened some years ago, that in that example, it's not clear to me whether they had clean and lean or not, but the way that it played out was that the town asked for the county support, and when the county came out, the town, because it was an issue in the town right-of-way, safety issue, safety hazard with something growing in the town right-of-way where people couldn't see, the town asked the county to help. The county cited the homeowner and the town, because it's the town's responsibility to maintain safety with the right-of-ways.
In the right-of-way.
And so the town and the homeowner were brought to court, and at that time, the homeowner said, or the town, sorry, I keep saying town, the village of Martin's Edition said that they'd be happy to clear this, and can they charge that to the homeowner? And the court said, yep, sure, great, go for it. So you want to avoid having to go to court.
Yeah,
each
that's
time,
what I'm
right?
saying. So why
I'm
don't-
thinking they probably didn't.
Right, but so in other words, just ask Ron for the scripting
right.
of kind of a best practice template, and let's start there. Like, I'm happy to work with you on it, but I don't, starting with a blank piece of paper seems silly on what I think is a, straightforward thing, and then we can, yeah, and then let's review that kind of pro forma from him, and we can see if we want to customize it to fit our,
Yeah, that would make
you
sense.
know.
Do you want to team up?
Sure, we can do that.
Dan, Phil, you want to team up on that?
Sure, do we need a team?
It's up to you guys.
You,
I mean, it's always nice
Well,
to
let
talk
me
to you,
ask,
Phil.
I was going to ask Andrea this. Is there any advantage to trying to get this done quickly? So that, because we don't know yet, we don't have a court date for any of these things for the county, and whether or not we should try to get this done quickly, and then we can act at least on the lean and the clean and lean.
I don't have a sense for how long it will take to go through the county process, and I don't have a good sense for how long it will take us to.
Well, that's where I defer
So
to,
I'm not sure.
I would say that
Again, I would-
at once, it
I would
really
echo-
requires some deliberation.
I would echo what Dan says, that Ron's got to have some kind of format that's fairly standard, boilerplate kind of stuff, and I think
Yeah.
we start there.
Yeah, ask Ron, have him send it to Phil and I, we can chat, so at least
Yeah.
we know that we're aligned, we'll chat with the rest of the council and, you know.
I'm just thinking we might be able to have it ready for November.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
maybe
seems
introduce
kind
it
of,
in November and,
Yeah.
and at best, introduce it in November and pass it in December.
Yeah, and maybe by then we'll have something from the county, but if we don't, then we can at least start acting.
Maybe it's 3 weeks away.
Yes?
No, I guess November is also July, doesn't it? 18th.
You're on.
Hello, is that on? Dennis Collins, 11400 Rokeby. Is the town in any contact with the owner of the property, or is it totally out of?
No, early on, we had, I'd say, sporadic contact with the owner of the property, but since then, it's been, the county's been handling that.
So there's no way, what I'm thinking, I mean, I know this is all going through the county now, and it might be too late, but if there's any way to just contact the owner and say, look, these people that are used to be your neighbors or were going to be your neighbors, this stuff is growing all around their properties. Can we come in and take care of this and bill you and see if by any chance they might agree to that and sign a piece of paper? And then we can take care of that later, once they sell the property, that they agree to take, to pay us back for whatever it takes.
I think,
But that doesn't solve the problem of the windows or,
Right.
That's
which
the
is,
permitting side,
But it
yes.
would take care, I'm sure of the people that live right around there,
Oh.
just look at that grass getting taller and there's animals going in, and I see them when I walk at night.
You saw the
And,
fox.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be living next to that. I mean,
I think,
What if we just threw caution to the wind and mowed the lawn?
What'd you say?
The challenge with that is it sets us up for bad precedent, that it's not our responsibility to mow people's lawns.
And it's also not our
it's
property.
also,
Right, but sometimes the
And it
fear of
isn't just mowing
precedent,
a lawn?
like paralysis due to fear of precedent,
It
Dan, are you
matters with
advocating lawlessness?
municipal law.
I mean,
total
no,
lawlessness.
no.
Let me see here.
One of, Ron, when I ask Ron questions, he often asks me, he'll look and see what's in the code, and then he'll ask me what, also how.
But Jane, I'm neither a police officer nor an attorney, and so what I'm advocating sometimes is actually just progress and results. So we can talk about mowing this lawn, we can write papers on mowing this lawn, we can do a legal brief on mowing this lawn, or we can just mow the f***ing lawn. So, you're like, I think that, look, I'm an elected official in this town, I represent people, I think a lot of normal people just want normal progress.
That's why they're
So,
laughing.
or, put it on the agenda for 15 months, we'll talk about it every time. And what I'm saying is like, the fear of precedence often paralyzes people.
It sets us up for a bad situation, though, that if, say, like, we mow this lawn, and it happens again and we mow another lawn. Now, there's another lawn, and we don't mow that one. red
Sure,
lawn.
but did I just set a precedent that council members should forevermore swear? No, I just did it once. So how many times in the last decade have we had this
I
issue?
had
So,
4 code violations I was working on. One has been resolved, one is in progress, hopefully will be resolved. One is the one we just talked about, and then there's a different one that requires law enforcement's help. So they're all different. What I'm hoping is to get everybody to where the first one was, where we contact the homeowner and we say, hey, this is a problem, it's a safety issue, and they say, oh, wow, okay, yeah, what's the time frame? Can you do it within 30 days? Yep, absolutely, great. Like, that would be ideal, but when we don't have that, we need a different way to deal with it rather than handling it for them.
But the other thing could be, I suppose if a group of citizens went over and did it on their own, then it wouldn't be associated with the town, and it would be,
Boy. No, right,
well,
yeah. So could I,
Jane, you're an attorney though, which I respect. I'm just a savage entrepreneur.
I think we should move on, I
Well,
really do.
I'd like
There's
to-
a lot to get through.
yeah, I'd like to just maybe summarize and advocate for something that you're saying here, Dan. One is, could we try, would the staff office try to reach out to this person and make the question, make the ask, with the reasons that Mr. Dennis Collins gave, about the problems with the neighbors, side-by-side neighbors. The second thing, just for, inquiry here, you mentioned cutting the grass. Were you thinking that our town maintenance crew would do that? And here's the question, because it isn't grass, it's 3 feet high, some places 4 feet high. It's like hay, I don't know what it all is, but it's a lot more work than just taking in the riding mower or standing mower and going and cutting it. So there's more to it than that. Were you thinking of us contracting that out?
As Jane would point out, I wasn't thinking. I was just,
right.
just advocating to do something.
Okay.
I don't know what the
All
right
right.
tools are.
Okay, so I'd like to go back, and for expediency's sake here, we will make an inquiry to the town, to the owner, property owner, and just see, and then we'll go from there, and we'll see.
And just to be clear, we have had
might-
multiple attempts to contact the homeowner, and I think probably heard from him one time, and that's when the non-safety fixes went up. So I'm not optimistic, but
and might we inquire of Beth D whether they do long grass cutting, so we can just hire them to do it?
Well, we'll find out first, because we have to be sure we're going to get
I understand,
reimbursed.
understand.
I'd like to think.
I mean,
We'll find out what the dollar value is. I mean, if it's nominal, whatever that means, let's take that step first. Okay,
There you
what
go.
was that? Rent a goat, oh my gosh.
It's straw, it's not poison ivy.
No,
No, I have
No, I
seen it,
know.
I'm aware of
But
it,
they,
yeah.
they rent it out to poison ivy places.
Okay. All right, so, great. We will move on. Andrea is going to reach out to Ron to get some language that Dan and maybe Phil can kind of work on and review that against the current ordinance that we have, right? Right. Okay. Councilmember, anything else you wanted to say? You're good? Okay. All right. Dan, do you have anything to offer about the 2020 census? I wanted, just brief if you like, whatever you wanted to say.
She reached out, a representative of the
Yeah.
census reached out. I thought it sounded like an important thing, so I'd invited her to come and, speak with us and share the information and got the Citizens Association involved, but then she just ghosted us, so,
Ghosted?
yes.
Oh,
Who is this?
is it worth
Well,
trying again?
She's representing the census, so I'm not sure. I reached out to her, I responded twice, and then.
Would you
that was
like to
that.
tell the council briefly what that message was about? Do you recall?
I would have to,
Okay. Community,
It's about communications related to census.
it was a
Oh,
community team.
Pennsylvania?
So
Did we
this is the
find that
person
out?
that you were asking if it was Pennsylvania?
yes, I did ask her back. I just wanted to confirm. I noticed that your address is Philadelphia. Are you sure you want Montgomery County, Maryland?
Yeah, pretty certain.
And she answered.
So I
you?
may have turned her off at that point.
Oh, did she not respond to that?
No.
From that point?
Same.
Oh.
Have you heard from her or not?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay.
So she's out of the Philadelphia office,
Could-
and she is in charge of this region.
Okay.
She has already met.
James, we get you to go to the mic, sorry, just so they can catch you.
My fault.
Thank you.
James Gaston, Village of Martin's Additions. In regards to census, first of all, I am on the MML Community Engagement Committee, and their representative actually came to our last meeting, and they spoke about some of the strange things that are going to happen for the census. One is there will be no paper applications.
Right, it's all
That's
digital.
number one. Number two is if you miss the 3 postcards that they're going to send to you, you will not be able to do a census. So those are, yes, you'll get 3 postcards. If you don't respond,
Very good to
you will
know.
not ever be able to participate in the upcoming census.
Wow.
Thirdly, the person that you're referring to, she's already met with the town of Somerset, and we've also scheduled a time with her as well. So some of the other jurisdictions in Down County, if you will, have going to do the regular social media and not meet with her at all, but some of us have decided to meet with her. Town of Somerset, myself, and I think one other town is gonna meet with her. So she does exist. She might have went on vacation or training
Sure.
or what have you, but she does exist. Asia, Washington, I think.
Yes, I think
Yes.
that's right. That's right.
That's right, but she does exist, and she probably was a training.
Great.
Other questions?
No. So if she reaches back out, then I'm happy to take the lead to try to facilitate it. I just thought for all of us as, like citizens, it's a really important topic. So I thought
it
it would be
is.
good for us to just try to inform folks.
And I agree,
Okay.
like I said, that's my position. The state of Maryland in the region came in 3rd place. Virginia was number 1, DC was number 2, and Maryland was number 3. 64%?
Oh, really? Wow.
In terms of response rate?
I'm sorry,
Was
yes, in terms of response rate. This is how,
That was for the,
that was for the 2010.
yes.
And so we were in 3rd place.
Hmm.
Maryland, state of Maryland was in 3rd place.
Percent,
Virginia
wow.
was number 1, and the District of Columbia, my hometown, number 2.
James, I'm sorry, do you know when it's going to start?
Yes, the process will begin in March.
Okay,
So come
Go
March,
from
April, and May, you'll start receiving postcards.
okay.
Postcard comes to your house. If you don't respond online, 2nd postcard, 3rd postcard, you're off the list.
Okay, thank you.
So it's paperless, but they send you postcards.
No comment.
Meeting that you're going to be scheduling with this person
Yes.
with the Village of Martin's Additions, Town of Somerset,
Right.
is that something that Garrett Park could piggyback on? Is
It
that-
definitely is. We're still in preliminary stages. The meeting basically is to try to help the county go from 3rd to 1st and how to go about that. And like I said, some of our colleagues have decided that it's not that big of a deal to them. Use that term loosely. usually. And so they're not going to reach out, have a meeting, things of that nature. But the town of Somerset, Matt, he's already had a meeting with her. And I'm trying, I just haven't gotten to that point yet. But yes, we could possibly have a joint meeting. I had to discuss it with my council to see if that's something they want to do. Or you could host it, and then I can invite them to come here, and then that way we accomplish it.
Right.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Are you doing it during a town council meeting, or are you doing it as an ad hoc?
As
town-
an ad hoc.
Okay.
It's totally
All
ad
right,
hoc.
we might reach out to you later just to get what kind of date you're using and go from there. I think Andrea and I will reach out to this individual and tell her, you know, we definitely are interested. All right, we'll copy you, Dan, because I know she sent it to us. So.
Great.
Anybody else have any questions regarding the census?
What was the third thing you said? No postcards, all digital?
I'm sorry, say it again?
You said no, all.
Everything is online.
Postcards.
Everything is online. If you miss 3 postcards, the third thing is that Maryland came in third. And so the big push from MML and Community Engagement Committee is to get us into first or second, at least in the region. I think we even came behind the state of Pennsylvania.
Only 64%.
We gotta do better than that.
Okay?
That's pretty bad. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
I'm going to bid you adieu.
All right.
It's been a pleasure. If anybody has any questions or comments, please see the box.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you for.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That sounds like a really fabulous scheme for undercounting
Yep,
lower
yep.
income people.
Yeah.
That's one of the criticisms.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I mean, that sounds like a scheme for undercounting new citizens of lower income people. If you don't respond to the third postcard, they're not gonna come knock on your door.
And seniors who don't use computers?
Right, so let me address that. So the postcard comes to your house, you don't use computers, you don't use email, they are willing to come out to you with a laptop and help you answer the question.
Oh, good to know.
Okay, so it's not, but my point is, if you don't respond to the 3 postcards, you're going to miss out. And that's the point I want to make. You have to let them know.
I wonder if we can get some to be posted in the post
Did I answer
office.
your question, sir? Sir?
Well, I'm afraid to talk.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Do-
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
one more question. Do you know if the census will be providing promotional materials, such as a poster that we could post at our post office?
Yes.
Since
and,
all of our
well,
residents,
My guess is
have
they're
to get
probably
their
going to
mail
do the
there?
social media route, but I'm sure once we have a
but like
meeting.
an old-fashioned,
Right, the old
put
fashioned.
it on the bulletin board?
I can't think that they wouldn't, however, they're really pushing the social media route, and that's what some of our other down county individuals are gonna do, they're gonna do the social media route. And-
Right, we could do both, but we conveniently have a post office where everyone has to come to get their mail if they want their mail,
There you go.
so.
There. Anyone else? Going once, going twice, 3 times.
That's it.
Run what you can.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
All
James.
right. Thank you, James. Have a good evening. Okay.
Impetus for this.
Okay.
Inviting us.
Yeah. All right, I think we're here at town updates, is that right? Okay. Wow, I think you've heard a little bit about the SRTS sidewalk project. One other thing we can add is we're hoping to maybe meet with Patriot next week. They believe that they'll be able to start at the beginning, I won't say very beginning, at the beginning of November. And we'll find out from there what their schedule of work will be and how soon, how quickly we can get it done. I think that's all I have to say.
My recollection is the timeframe was 5 months.
150 days, which is equivalent to 5 months, right?
And we'll, just as Mayor
Mhm.
Kathy's been doing, we'll continue to post updates on
Oh,
on the
yeah.
website.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll.
yeah, definitely. Yes?
Steph Boutin, Shelley Court. The question is, they start in November, will they be breaking for the colder weather, do you think?
I am hoping that we're going to have this done before winter sets in. That's the plan in my mind. And we'll see about that talk with them. They know that that's been our hope, so I'm sticking to that. We don't want anything to slow down. Okay, next. Comprehensive Arboretum Plan. Councilmember McClintock.
Well, my job here is to introduce the fearless leader of the Arboretum Committee, Michael Spector, who is going to give us an update on the status of the Comprehensive Arboretum Plan and give everyone the information about the opportunity for the entire town to come see the result of this extremely long and involved process that the Arboretum Committee undertook. And it really was a process and a labor of love. So Jenny Kravanek is one of the members of the committee who's here tonight, but those who aren't here all really committed a Herculean effort to this process, not only to get the plan, but to back all those steps up to what kind of a plan do we want to see? What is the vision for the plan? What do we need to ask the contractors to do? How do we sort the contractors? There was just a tremendous amount of research and dedication and work involved in shaping a plan that would really suit the town of Garrett Park's needs as an arboretum, not only now, but as a flexible visionary document into the future to adapt to changing circumstances. So I really want to extend my personal thanks and gratitude to the members of the committee, including those who aren't here tonight, including those who have moved on from their committee labors, and now give the floor to Michael to give the more detailed update on where exactly we stand.
Thank you very much. And as you know, you were at many of those meetings, so you know how intense they were and how hardworking they were. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Usually I appear before adversarial courtrooms. It's nice to appear before a group of friends and fellow neighbors. 2 years ago, as you know, and this I don't have to tell this council, and I promise to be brief, sometimes when trees and the discussion of trees comes to this council, it can be long, extended, and heated. And several years ago, the prior mayor came to me and said, would you be willing to become chair again? I was on the committee, and to explore putting together a comprehensive arboretum plan so that when we have issues of people complaining about a tulip poplar on their street that might be failing, or when, as on Keswick, there was a line of trees that started to fall down, or as the willow oaks started to drop branches. Rather than having heated, emotional discussions, we would have a plan. We would have something that the council could look to, that the town could look to, that the citizens could look to, so that everyone here would say, yes, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how we should deal with this problem. And so we undertook the task under the prior town manager. We set out request RFPs. We sent this matter out for bids to do a plan, to do a full, which would include a full inventory of what we have. And the committee worked tirelessly, a committee that used to meet, I guess like most committees in town, quarterly, once every 3 months there would be a meeting. We started meeting every month, and sometimes more than once a month. And that has continued for over 2 years. And so I appreciate the mayor allowing me to finish out my term. I'm ready for a rest, but I just wanted to see this through till the very end, and then in the beginning as it's starting to take shape. So I'm very pleased tonight, and I had one copy actually printed up in color on my own that I'm happy to present to the council tonight. Please look it through, and also in addition to that,
Thank you.
I also have put together a thumb drive that I'm presenting to the town that hopefully can be placed on the town website by, before our meeting on Wednesday. As we've advertised, NRD, who was the contractor, and I just want to emphasize, I think we chose the right contractor to do this job. They have really done a great job. But they were very willing to listen to us. When they first submitted this Arboretum plan to us, you'll notice it's in 2 parts. When they first submitted it to us, it was kind of jumbled together, and as you notice, there's a green separation sheet for part 1 and part 2. Part 2 is the operations manual. It's actually something that the town manager can look at, and I want to thank Andrea for really becoming involved in this, attending the meetings, working with NRD, working with our town arborist, Phil Normandy, to make sure that it had in there what we needed. We're all well aware, and I think it came up at the tree walk yesterday, that actually dealing with trees in our town can take an inordinate amount of her time. And if we can make that easier for her, that's time that the town can save. The other thing, I'd like to just thank everybody by name. Chris Keller, Jenny Kravanek is here, Pat Keating, Kathy Benjamin, Andrew Fiedler, Carol Davies, who was on the committee early on but then left, and Jane McClintock, who was our liaison and who came to many of the meetings, really, was there with us working hand in hand on the drafts. And of course, Phil Normandy. The new members of the committee, Charlie Andrews and Jim Sullivan, who just basically come on, I think they'll get involved. They are very enthusiastic about this and will work to see the implementation. And as you know, as you've looked around town, this is only part of the project. The other part of the project is the inventory. And that has already saved the town. I can say it's saved money, it's definitely saved time. At this point, if I see a tree, the other day I was walking down Waverly, and instead of saying, oh, the tree that's between this address and that address, I just say to Phil Normandy, or say to the town manager, number 906. Look at the tag, it's failing. It's a maple, it's failing. You can look up on the database to see what kind of a tree it is, what's wrong with it, when it was planted, what its history is, and how it's going to be dealt with. So that has helped immensely. We had I think there was on Claremont, there was a large tree that fell down. We knew the numbers of it right away. We knew what it was, what happened. So this is already paying dividends to the town. And I'm very proud to have been a part of it, and I think it is something that we've really given the town the vision that what we had in the beginning has come true. And I hope this is a work in progress. As you see it now, that's the copy for the town office to keep. Please feel free to make as many copies as you want, and I think if you see it on the town website, I did it in color because it doesn't, we worked on it in black and white when we were doing the edits, but it really comes alive when you look at it in color. And on Wednesday, NRD will be here. They will demonstrate the inventory, talk about the plan, answer questions. So hopefully if we can get this up on the website before then. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Elizabeth too for constantly being kind of prodding me gently that I needed to get the minutes and the agenda in for our next meetings, but trying to do that. But that was very welcome because I got the helped me to engage my time. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and please accept this from the committee. It's one of those things that I think makes this such a great place to live. We have, just so you know, just little factoids that we got out of this. We never knew until NRD did the inventory that we have a named stream that runs through Garrett Park. Glendara Stream is the stream that actually runs into Porcupine Woods. Who really had a name? Also, the fact that there are, the average in Montgomery County of tree coverage is basically less than 50%. We have in Garrett Park 87% coverage. Now
It's an
that,
arboretum.
kind of prevents a community vegetable garden, but other than that, it's something that really does keep us cooler in the summer.
Yes, it
It
does.
probably does keep a lot of our energy costs low. I tell people what my air conditioning bills are, and they're a lot less than my friends, and I think that's part of it. So anyhow, thank you for letting me work on this, and I want to thank the committee again. Just great, this was truly a committee effort, and I want to thank the support of the mayor, the council, and the town manager in this project, and I look forward to finishing out my term and working on, some other things.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you.
And just to clarify, that the meeting that NRD is going to host here in the town hall this Wednesday is going to be at 7:30 PM.
7:30, yes. And they do have a presentation. One of the things that they did put together for us is an ArcGIS program that we are going to be able to, everybody in town, the possibilities, I don't want to say endless, but this could be a lot of fun. I mean, the scout troops could then do, looking out for hunts for like different types of trees. That you'll be able to look on a screen and look on your computer. I've done this, and actually like say, oh, look at Garrett Park, widen it out, and say, oh, this tree 1175 in front of my house. What is it? And it will tell you exactly what it is, when it's been planted, what its health is, and what's been done with it. So we finally have a handle. It's not, it's, as I said, it's a work in progress, but I think we finally now have a handle on our trees in town. Even Phil Normandy said, gosh, I never knew we had what we had. Now we know. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mike, very much. And I can say as a former council member, when I was the liaison to the Arboretum Committee, I know how much interest there was to have this long-term comprehensive plan, and it just wasn't happening. And so, Mike, you stepped up and you've delivered, and the whole town really will appreciate this.
Thank you.
And to Jane, yeah, thank you. All right, we have now Dan, are you ready to speak on this resident funding request process?
Sure. My thought, just to be efficient, is just to hand this document out, and then sort of be open to feedback for anyone who wants to share feedback. I think after the meeting, prior to the next meeting, and then we can make revisions. I think that's probably a more efficient way to do it. But the goal here was just to create a simple administrative form that anybody in town could fill out and request funding for a project or an event that they have in town, and then give us a way to take this information in, process it, evaluate it, decide on it, and if we're going to fund the event, we would do it. So I looked at what several other towns in the area do. Most of the towns have some process to do this sort of thing. I tried to incorporate all the feedback from the discussions that we had that the different council members raised, like, showing support on the form for there's, several other folks in town that support your event. Again, we can keep any of these boxes, we can add some other ones, and then on the back side, thanks to Kaki's fantastic flowchart work, we have a little description in a 4-step process of how it goes. And the thought there is, with a funding request, the first step is there a town committee or a town organization to go to, rather than asking the town, should you be asking someone else first, essentially. But you can review this on your own. If there's discussion and you want to have it now, I'm happy to take it. My thought is, it's probably most efficient if you email me or call me with feedback. I can revise, et cetera, and then maybe come back with something that's much closer to revision.
Dan, can I just ask a clarifying question? On step 1, when the first question is there a relevant town committee or town organization, do you mean to fund the request or support the request, as in support it that the town should fund it?
I think the intention here is to say, is there an organization, is there a committee that would fund it? Is what that question is.
So in other words, if yes, money is available, then go to step 4 means transfer funds from that town organization or committee that has its own budget. Okay, so that only if there is no other source of funding available through a town committee or organization with its own budget allocation, then we come to the general fund. or the flow chart proceeds to that
That's right.
process for requesting from the general fund.
Yep, and we can clarify that in the chart.
Right, there was some implied sense that the committees would also already have funding. So if,
I only say that the word support
Yeah,
was
I understand.
ambiguous. to me
Yeah.
In that, you know, we support you and we'll give you money, or we support you going to the town to ask for money. So I wasn't clear what that word
And
support
that's-
meant in
yeah.
that context.
so to work with the chair, if there's funding already available at that committee, and if there wasn't, you know, either way, you're jumping down a step forward, because you got to work with the.
No, that
town
makes
manager.
sense. I just wasn't sure if there was a role that the flow chart was implying that the town committee or organization would have to second the request or support it to the town. Like, dear town, I'm the Arboretum committee, and we're voting to support the request for whoever.
Yeah, that
to do
gets into
whatever.
step 3 for other reasons, but,
Okay.
you know.
Yep, so I can
If-
clarify that.
Yeah, and I'd like to just clarify as well that if you have feedback, it really needs to be one-off with Dan, as we're learning about the more recent definitions of Open Meeting Act requirements are. I mean, you're not here to, after the council meeting, making decisions about this, right? You're just adding feedback, but it should still be one-on-one or BCC. Okay, just want to be sure you're clear on that.
Yeah, noted. So my thought there is I would take individual feedback and I could revise, and from anyone in town or anyone on the council, and then I can make the revisions and come back, and I think that's efficient. And then
Okay.
if there's feedback that is like conflicting, then I would bring that forward and say, hey, this requires some discussion, and let's have an open discussion. Do you want to go this way or that way? And then we would go through it like that.
Question, how many other towns did you find that have this? I'm just curious, because I've lived here for 10 years, and it's only came up this year.
Yeah, so I looked at 3 other towns, like Rockville was one, and then there was a couple other local ones, but it seemed sort of pretty easy to find the process that other towns had.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. Okay. Moving on to Stephen, detached accessory dwelling units. You have a quick update for us on that? Oh, no, it's not quick.
That's what I'm saying, my goal is to do this in 10 minutes or less.
Right.
I may not be able to do it as planned. What I have done is I've drawn up some diagrams of kind of what this really means in a physical sense of what the county has, they put forth a zoning text amendment, and in June I think it was June, it was passed unanimously, and it's going to go into effect the last day of December of this year. I guess I could do it really quick. I have, Dennis, would you mind handing these out? A couple of people I numbered them, and the reason I numbered them, council and everyone else.
I don't have, we don't have.
Yeah, I think it's, the reason I numbered them is I put this together really quickly, so I'm gonna make sure that in case I'm missing one small thing or a couple errors on this, I'll be able to fix it up or forward it out for any kind of record, so for everybody can take a look at it and give it back to me when we're done. So in essence, what the county has enacted is to make it more streamlined to be able to build an accessory dwelling unit on your property. So there already was a mechanism to be able to build like an accessory apartment within your house, but you have to go through a special process to do that. Now they want to make it more easy to do this as a second dwelling that's on your property. And what was included in that was that it would be the maximum of this would have to be no bigger than 50% of your existing house. So say you have a 1,000 square foot footprint of a house, you can't build more than 500 square feet, but if you have a 10,000 square foot house, you couldn't build. In theory, you can build more than 5,000 square feet, but they cap that at 1,200. So the maximum you can really do is 1,200, and that's if you have, say, a 2,400 square foot house. So what that means for Garrett Park, I drew just a couple of examples. This is just fictitious streets going around the corner. So lots E and F and G and H, those are all like very typical lot in Garrett Park. So it's 50 feet wide, it's 200 feet deep. Front setback is 30 feet, it's 10 feet on the sides. And there is a little bit of a rear setback, but it's usually more for controlling where the house is, not an accessory dwelling unit. So if we were to take the leap to say that Garrett Park would stay silent and not have anything on top of what the county would propose, here's some examples of what this might look like. So lot A at the top, that's showing a house without I'll call it DABU, it's a detached accessory dwelling unit. So that's a house that's maxing out its allowable zoning in Garrett Park. It would be a 15,000 square foot lot with a 2,700 square foot house, which is not really that common here. And you can build 18% of your lot as a house, and you build 20% in total. So that's kind of showing the maximum house with what is left over as a garage. So the lot B is the same basic lot with the same restrictions on it, but showing a DABU on it. And that would be a house that's not built out to its maximum of 2,700, but it's still fairly sizable first floor of 2,000. So that would allow you, since it would be 50% of that, to do a DABU, that could be 1,000 square foot. So I just showed that for reference of just how big that is, because I think county council, they wanted it to be even bigger than 1,200 maximum. That footprint probably looks familiar to people. That's a Chevy house with the front porch and the sleeping porch on the back. Put in the back in the position of a garage on a lot that's really 1.5 times the size of whatever like the most typical Garrett Park 10,000 square foot lot would be. So it's just kind of reflect that. Lot C is showing something that is back again to more of like a typical lot, like a 50 foot by 200 foot, but there's nothing that I've seen so far in that code that says that you can't build it within 12 feet of your rear line of your property, and you can't build it beyond the side setbacks of what was already on the line, so that would be 10 feet for us. But it doesn't say anything about pulling it forward. I think there might be something there about just really trying to get caught up and reviewing it in detail. There might be something in there about a space between the main house and the second house, but you could conceivably pull it forward and have another lot almost behind it, so you'd almost have like sort of house A and then house B, and they each would have their own backyard. Another example was just, I was curious what would happen with this on a corner lot, because we do have a lot of corners around this town. I think that the original plan for the town had a lot of lots that were narrow in the front and deep in the back. So it was really done in like 1890 style. You would build a house that was kind of narrow in the front, maybe one a little bit deep. You had a garden in the back. You didn't really have what we have now, which a lot of houses are turned 90 degrees, so they kind of the long way faces the street. That's more of a mid-century and beyond thing, but 1890s Victorian area, that was more common to do this 50-foot. So we don't have a ton of these lots like this, but if you did have, say, a 75-foot by 200-foot on the corner, if you followed all the rules the way they have them in that zoning text amendment as is, if the house faced the street to the front on the narrow end, you could still build an accessory dwelling unit in the back. It would be so far back it would sit where a garage might be, but there would be nothing to restrict it from almost looking like you would have the front of house E facing that side street, you would have the front of lot D facing that main street, and you would have the DABU in the back, kind of in between it, looking like a third house. So I was just thought I would just explain sort of what some of these things are. So I'm just trying to study it to kind of figure out what might be recommendable for Garrett Park. But if anybody around town or on the council has any thoughts on it, please share them with me. I'd like to be able to start figuring out what we should do, if anything. We always have the option of just not requiring anything different than what the county requires. So that would be the case. I think the only thing we would have to do is to clarify whether we have 18% max coverage for the main house, and there would be up to 20% including an accessory building. But that was written before there really was this idea of accessory house on the lot. So if we don't think it's any different, accessory building versus accessory house, then we could conceivably just leave the Garrett Park ordinance the way it is. And some of these scenarios would just be.
This is great.
Yeah,
This is
Stephen,
great,
thanks for doing
really.
this. It's incredibly
Really.
helpful, because I've
Nice.
read through this, but the visual is very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you currently have you formulated your own opinion yet about what you think we might want to consider, or your comfort level, or where you're at?
That's why I was trying to do this, to kind of see what might happen with a couple of theoretical lots. This is kind of like the same formula I used about almost 8 or 9 years ago, looking at land use task force things. We did a presentation here about it. So it's helpful to kind of just like see what changes in bulk might be. My first inclination was to think that there was so much time and effort put into the maximum lot coverage. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into the lot max coverages that we have, and a lot of the side benefits of that, like it's explained in the setback ordinance of it's looking for open space, it's looking for preserving the park-like character of town. And one of the side benefits we even have of that is that we have much less stormwater to deal with than any other town around us. Because if you're just across in Whitefield Park, you could take the same zoning and build 30% of your lot instead of 20%. We see some massive houses going on pretty small lots, and actually in Garrett Park Estates, it's 30%, but it's smaller lots. It might be 40% in R60. So they're pretty big, it's kind of like Augusta. So that's sort of a side benefit that wasn't totally why we did the town had done the setbacks the way they are. But I feel like there's so much effort you put into that, I feel like it's just a non-starter to add to that percentage. That was my thinking, is just assume we didn't add to it, and assuming that a accessory dwelling is the same as, say, a garage or a shed, there's no difference to it. You know, we probably could just leave it like that. So.
Do you?
So I'm also curious if people see issues with that.
I have two questions for you. One is, are you planning or are you already working with the land use task force members on this?
That's another reason for doing this, because I've brought it up a couple times, I haven't gotten any response, so
Okay.
this will help
Okay,
continue.
great. This,
Continue that.
and the second, and I apologize if somehow you've made reference and I've missed it, or if it's already been done and studied, but for the lots that we have in town where we already have these accessory dwelling units, or some of them are like that, some of them are garages, but they have, accommodations for sleeping and all that. Do we know what those specs look like in contrast to what the county here is set up? And is it worth going, because at some point there'll be a grandfathering in if we have to go that way?
Yeah, it would be like an enforcement issue if something was built that wasn't to the zoning or the code.
I just don't know how many of them exist like that, and, just, okay.
But the other part of that, I like that list, is that these are for building a new one, if you want to plan a new one. And
Yeah.
it sounds like there is a restriction. You can't be a speculative developer and say, I want to build a house and a patio at the same time. You have to already have the house to be able to do it. I'm not sure where it landed, but there was a lot of back and forth on whether an owner should be required to stay on the property, either in the main house or the dwelling unit. I think they landed, Andrew, you may know, I think they landed on one or the other had to be. I'm not sure where it landed.
The owner has to occupy one of the two buildings.
It has to, yeah.
Sorry, say that?
The owner has to occupy one of the two buildings.
Okay.
Part of it was set up so you could do it two ways. You could either have a supportive house in the back, maybe you have in-laws, maybe you have somebody else running it, or the vice versa. If it's too big, say for an elderly couple, they could move into the smaller house, rent the bigger house out to the family. But another part of that clause is if you have an existing structure and you build on that footprint, there's a certain date, I think it was 2011, 2012. So say you have a two-car garage in the back of your property, they would let you build on top of that footprint without having it adhere to the new setback. So if somebody has a garage currently that's 5 feet from their back and 5 feet from their side, which is the Garrett Park ordinance, they could conceivably build straight up from that, build a second floor on it, and have the funds live there.
All right.
Stephen, is there concern on the part of the county when they make this happen or make it possible to happen about the fact that it's going to add significant impervious area to the lot? And given the fact that stormwater management is a big problem, that's going in the opposite direction. Is the county talking about that? Is there any kind of way to, is there any talk about accommodating the concern about stormwater management?
That was a concern that seemed to be raised by a lot of towns. It was very helpful. Andrea had shared a lot of different chatter she'd heard from various towns and other articles about this. That issue did come up a lot. To my knowledge, I don't know if maybe some of the other towns are considering, say, that they have 30% max coverage, to say, well, you could get a bonus 5, say, or whatever, if you are doing this initiative. To my knowledge, or what I've seen so far, they're all kind of working within that existing zoning So, I mean, so you'd still be using the same, I mean, you could build a 30% footprint house or a 20 and 10 house and Dido, so they kind of talked about it, but they're not really.
There's no
not
plan,
really-
there's no
not
plan.
really a plan for it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of other impacts that were brought up, like is it gonna have traffic, is it gonna have parking issues and
Right.
so on and so forth. School issues, which usually gets.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big one too.
Great.
So that's kind of where it was. It was really just kind of get the thoughts, context, or if everybody wouldn't mind, I did this in about 7 minutes, so we have the numbered ones back to Dennis, and I'm gonna try to fix it up and proofread it, and then get something in the bugle that explains it.
So Stephen, the county is going to put this into play at the end of December, is that what I heard you say, something like that?
December 31st, they said
So-
it, and I don't think they have to act on it either, I think it's just
Automatically takes effect. So is it to our benefit to try to get ahead of this and have something ready before that, or?
That's the idea.
I mean-
If we want to do anything other than just, I guess, we almost have to do something to clarify whether or not accessory dwelling, which could be, get you up to 20% of your lot, whether that is purposely not a dwelling unit or if it doesn't matter. I think we have to do that either way. But then, if there are any other overarching concerns about how or it might be recommended that Garrett Park steer this sort of thing, I just don't know if people take issue to them kind of feeling like a second house fronting a street or, you know, about where they're positioned in the back. They should be purposely held in a certain zone of the property. So, again, I'm curious, you know, people can get feedback from email or give me a call. Interested in getting that.
And these accessory dwelling units, from the county's perspective anyway, they can be 2 floors? Or is it really
They can,
meant to be
yeah.
just a single floor?
It can be 2 floors, so this was just showing it.
Okay,
You could
wow.
build
Yeah.
a new one that's, say, 600 square foot, and then double that to get 1,200 square foot.
Okay.
There's even ways, if you build it inside the house, you can have an unlimited area that's in the basement. But you can't have one in the house and one outside as well.
Oh, that's good to know.
I just thought it was
Okay,
really
wow.
interesting when I was doing it, that a 960 square foot Chevy house is well within the limit of what they're
Yes.
talking about, because I'm not sure the county really realized
Insightful.
what they're looking at.
Yeah. Do you think we'll have any more feedback?
Sorry?
Oh, no, no stigma there.
House plan free.
Do you think we'll have any more information for the next council meeting?
Sorry?
Do you think we'll have any more information for the next, for
Yeah,
the
I'd
November
like to
one?
get some feedback, and I want to rebrush
Okay.
the subject with the land use committee
Okay.
as well. I talked about it a little bit with George Martin, but I didn't really have a
Okay.
chance to get in depth with the members about it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dick, would you use the mic,
Oh,
please?
right.
Just to get a picture of what you were thinking in these hypotheticals, on the ones like, for example, A and F, where you show a small building in the back, what kind of setbacks were you imagining when you drew those?
I forgot to mention, those are just, that's like a typical garage, so if you had a 18% of your lot coverage as a house, and then, which is the maximum, and then 2% that's left over is your garage. So a lot of Chevy houses had a 200 square foot garage originally, it's sort of that size, but that's only 5 feet from the back, 5 feet from the side.
5 feet, okay.
Whereas a diner has to be 10 feet from the side to meet or exceed Garrett Park, and it has to be 12 feet from the back if you follow the county law.
What's the current rear setback in your apartment?
Sorry?
What's the rear setback in your apartment now?
I think it's just 5 feet for it, for that accessory building. I think Harry Gordon really worked on trying to do something where it wouldn't have, there is one house that's 120 feet back, it's unusual in the town. He was trying to do something where there's a sliding scale that kind of kept those buildings from having, again, where they would kind of be up their friends in the front. I can't remember if that ever went into effect or not. Or, but then I know there's another one about 25 feet. So, that kind of goes back to, that you couldn't have a accessory dwelling, by definition, may not, you can keep that.
Okay, if there isn't any other further discussion, thank you, Stephen. We could go to Hans. And Hans, you have two items. One is the stormwater, and the second one is the Strathmore Hill. So however brief you can be, it'd be appreciated.
Real fast. I met on September 11th, the Stormwater Management Committee, and basically looked at the plans for the Claremont Avenue issue going into Porcupine Woods, and then the Kenilworth Rokeby problem. On the Kenilworth one, I think we conclude that some combination of riprap on the south side of that stretch, and some to be yet to be determined solution further on down to handle either an open swale or possibly in-ground pipe. And we really need to have another sort of walking session of that area to assess it. Claremont, the biggest problem is there's a pipe that runs right to next to the foundation of the house there, and it's not in good shape. It's clearly had been leaking, and so the question is, what are we going to do? And I think that we all felt that needs to be replaced and moved away from the foundation if at all possible. There was extensive discussion about the fact that videos exist of the storm we had on July 9th, and the question is, and we're using that as a determining factor of what needs to be done, and some feel that that is adequate, that the footage didn't show a real problem with the handling of the water on Claremont. And the question that some of us have shouldn't we get a history of the storms to say when was the last 100-year storm, the last 50-year storm, the last? So we have a history, because the fact is that when the engineer Clark Azar developed these plans, he based it on the county requirement to build this, to spec it out for a 25-year storm. And we need to make sure we understand what the July 9th storm was in comparison to the storms we had. And so we talked about doing a capture of the storm history. There's also discussion about, especially on the Kenilworth property, that we at some point soon need to engage engineers from the county. And the reason there being primarily one of getting them to buy in whatever the solution is, and hopefully agree with what the solution is, because funding will be needed to build what we have there, because it's going to be an expensive project, and the best way to get funding is to get the county engaged and have them join that effort both in the design stage and the specification stage, but as well as in the execution stage. So that's really quick and dirty sort of wrap up what we talked about. On Claremont Avenue, on Strathmore Avenue Hill, and my hope that we could get a flashing light installed that would be triggered by the crosswalk at Keswick, and the flashing light would be about halfway up the hill, and I would say essentially flashing light as a pedestrian in the crosswalk now, so you need to slow down and be able to stop when you get to that point. The county and SHA agreed with us and they did some surveys, 2 surveys, including one that they did on a summer weekend, which is what we asked for, and concluded those studies indicated that a flashing light was warranted, but that was then conditioned on the fact that it would go to a larger review committee that SHA has. And I just heard in mid-September from SHA that they've ruled against such a light installation. So I've been in touch with Jeff Waldstreicher's office, Senator Waldstreicher's office, and we're talking about what are their suggestions for how we should proceed. So that's where we stand on that.
Okay, thank you, Hans. I'd like to just make a clarification. I think at this point, we're not going forward with any further study on the stormwater volume. That I think the task force came to a consensus that we have enough information to act on a few remedies already. And as far as the county goes, the county has right-of-way or easement? Right-of-way on the south, on the downside stream of the bike path at the end of Rokeby, Kenilworth Rokeby, it's really all the Rokeby area there. And that there was consensus, I thought, that we would be, we'll get the Clark as our engineers, to evaluate the recommendations of the task force for, placement of the riprap and maybe some holding pools or holding basins. I don't know. Chuck, did you want to add any? Chuck is the chair. Do you want to add anything that I'm maybe misstating? If we can keep it brief, thanks.
Sure. Yeah, just for clarification on what the committee, consensus of the committee was for the Claremont Avenue area, it was that to not replace the pipe under the road, to relocate or install a new pipe further away from the house between a junction box and yard inlet behind the house, and then over to a junction box at the road. But we didn't feel like we needed to do any more study for larger storms, because we have decades worth of comments here from neighbors in the area, and there was only one case where a previous owner, it was apparently happened where the one yard inlet was clogged. So while Clark Azier does do studies for 10-year storms, the consensus of the task force was that we did not need to do any more study in that area for larger storms. That's my recollection. Dick, you were there as well. Did you have the same recollection on that? Yeah. And then just downstream in the Porcupine Wood side of the pipe, the sidewalk project has some planned improvements there. So what Clark Azier showed is piping and riprap upstream of the road and replacing the pipe under the road, and then improvements downstream. The consensus of the committee is to only add or relocate a pipe just upstream of the road. So it's significantly less work.
And less money.
And it was based mainly on, what has been reported to happen there in the past. And it was a surprise, I think, at least to me and some others, that the pipe was that close to the house. So,
And the homeowner was okay with this?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what about on the Rokeby swale behind the Canetti and Heinsohn's?
So on that side, the consensus of the task force was to do install some riprap at select locations, because some of the residents there didn't want to see what's happened over here at Holy Cross for half a year in the large scale piping and riprap, or if we did put riprap in there, a lot of them didn't, or at least one resident, doesn't want to have some trees taken down, which it appears a lot of trees would have to be taken down. So the consensus of the task force was to put in riprap in select locations to prevent further erosion of their property. And we also sort of discussed having some check dams or some riprap installed to promote drainage basins there to collect some of the water for some of the smaller storms, or even the larger storms, I guess, so that water would be held there and infiltrate into the groundwater. So, and then George Miller did some great investigation, and then at one point met with Dick Pratt out with his surveying instruments, and found that just downstream of the pipe that goes under the bike path, there's a drainage swale berm. And when we get heavy rains, the water builds there and actually blocks the water or slows the water coming through the pipe under the path, and then can pond up and collect upstream. So we need to get with the county, as you mentioned, to talk about what they can do, or we can do jointly with them within their easements of either
On the downside?
yeah, on downstream side of that bike path. And it's the area between the bike path and the train track. Because that water goes into county's junction box.
Right.
And apparently, the pipe is not big enough there. It's collecting water mostly from the estates. And we're getting a blockage of water there that's blocking water to flow through the pipe like it should be flowing through. So,
Okay.
Dick, did you want to mention anything else that...
I'd just like to emphasize one thing that Chuck said, and that I'll use it distinctive names for parts of developments here, and we're basically handling between the causeway that the bike path is on and the railroad tracks, water from almost all of White Flint Park. And when you look at it sort of the first time, you think, well, the county water goes down the county pipe, and our water is supposed to go through a pipe that combines with that. And if it can't all get through, it can, kind of trickle down the open land. But if you get a really huge volume, this is what George discovered, the flow of water reverses in the pipe that's supposed to take town water and go into the pipe that the county put in.
Right.
And it's conceivable, and we're not really positive, but it's conceivable, and the county really ought to look into this, that's slowing the water that's coming under the bike path.
The town water.
Causing the situation where we've seen a fair backup on the north side there. So the county really needs to be drawn into this, because there's an insufficiency there that's primarily oriented to their drainage area.
Right. Hope you all understand that. I definitely appreciated that insight when I heard what George Miller found. So it's, a big water box underground that is taking water from the White Flint and Garrett Park Estates, and the volume is such, and the placement of the pipes into that box were very interesting to me. But forcing on greater volume of stormwater, pushing the water of the town out, and then driving that water from the town. This is downstream of the bike path. Driving that water then down through like a floodplain between two of our residents, the Simons and Silvermans, and just flooding it out because of the force of the White Flint water in the box, not allowing the town water to get in where it's supposed to go. So, yeah, we'll get the county into that. We'll first, I think there's going to be a walkthrough with the residents coming up, and then I think once you all settle on that, the task force, then we should be talking with the county about talking with the Clark Azar about what our proposals are, and then getting the county to see this as well.
Yeah, so the next step is to have a site visit at Rokeby with the residents, and then try to get with the county. But I just wanted to add, I think we had 2 very good, productive meetings, and we have a real good path forward, I think, in at least over in Cambria, and then upstream of the bike path, to put in some select rock.
You mean Claremont or?
Claremont, did I say
Okay.
Cambria? I meant Claremont, yeah. And then sort of what we still need to develop is what happens between the bike path and the train track. But I think we made
Yeah.
a lot of good progress.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chuck, for leading that, and Hans for staying on top of it, and for the task force members. John King is there as well. All right. And now, traffic and parking. Phil, if you have anything?
Just short, we've installed a number of signs. We've gotten some comments back from various people about the signs and whether they may cause more problems than not. Some people have liked where our signs have been placed, especially around the Wells Park. Other people have not. But we've decided that we would wait for about 2 to 3 months to see how things work out, whether the parking really jams up around the area or whether or not things are working out the way we expect. One of the biggest residents' fears was that people would start now using the other side of the road. In other words, they would be parking on both sides of Rokeby there where it's coming down from the train tracks, and that would in turn, from commuters, and that would in turn cause problems with the residents being able to, for instance, park in front of their own homes or even have trucks navigate the area. So far, that hasn't materialized yet, but we've got a little bit more time to wait and see. If nothing really happens, then probably leave it the way it is. If something does happen, we'll have to go back and look. One of the nice things is that the signs can be removed relatively quickly.
Yeah, and again, our thanks to Phil for leading that and for the members of that Traffic and Parking Committee getting together and working out some solutions. Appreciate that. Okay, if no discussion, moving to the next item on the agenda, Town Manager's Report, Andrea Fox.
Sure, I don't have anything different other than what was in the written report. So just real quick, the September revenues, operations and capital budgets are at expected levels. Total revenues and expenses are within projections. There was one building permit that was issued to 10812 Claremont to add a screen porch addition. I'll just summarize and say that we've had a busy month in terms of town maintenance and in terms of town office tasks, and the details are in the manager's report. Any questions?
Is the porch on, is that an enclosed porch or technically?
Screen, yeah, screen,
Okay.
yeah, screen porch addition.
Question, it's not in that report, but it's something I was curious about. I guess it was last week. There was one day right in the middle of the morning school rush. There was, the street was chopped up on Kenilworth down here. I was curious, whoever chopped up that street and repaved it, did they ask for a town's permission or scheduling or anything like that? Or did they
If
just
it was
do it?
one of the utilities, they have to call this utility to, make sure they're not ever gonna have any problems when they go to dig. Otherwise, we don't typically find out about it unless the maintenance staff are working around and sort of keep an eye on it. And then typically, they'll let me know that something's happening, then they'll look to see if it's been repaired yet or not. I think in this case, it was like a temporary patch, but it hasn't been fully repaired as of last week anymore.
I was just curious if there's any mechanism for us to be able to call the schedule, because it was a hassle on my son and then being late for school because I was stuck behind a dump truck for 8 minutes or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, because the dump trucks were sitting right in front of here and there was really no room to
Yeah.
squeeze through. You got kids crossing with that.
Yeah, I think the challenge is with, if it's depending on the type of problem, obviously, right? But if there's a water main break or a gas leak, they kind of have to do what
That's
they need to
emergency,
do.
yeah, but
I know we've asked before in the past for them to contact us, but I don't know how, traditionally, if that's,
Maybe,
they've done that or not.
And it's inevitable that it happens right after we finish paving the street.
this is
Yeah.
a nice block.
Oh,
down, but,
okay.
yeah, I saw a big dent on our
Wait
end.
for it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean,
I think we
It's-
could, maybe we
begged
could
them
follow
to-
up.
We begged them to give us their plans, long-range plans, knowing full well that plans change for a water main break or whatever else. And it's almost impossible. WSSC is terrible, and Pepco and washing gas, not much better.
It might be worth us, the town office, reaching out to the utilities and saying once again, hey, you got to alert us when
starting
you're,
at 10 or
yeah,
something if
you
it's
know,
there.
we just need to know, and then we can actually have a conversation, right, Andrea and Elizabeth. Okay, there's something else that come to mind, but I don't remember it now. Oh, I did want to bring up something, and I wanted you all to appreciate the work that Andrea has been putting into the communications with Legit for getting reimbursement for some of the tree work. We've never done this before, and Legit is the
Local Government Insurance Trust.
trust, and they're going to be reimbursing us close to $9,000 on some of the tree expenses that we've had to take care of with the storms. So,
That was with the accident too, right? Or was that different?
That will also be legit. I don't, how this works is that once I get a bill, I send them the bill, and then they process the claim. So I've started the claim with them for the light pole, but it'll be open until we actually get the replacement pole purchase.
and if you don't know what that reference is, that is referring to a light pole number 8, I think, on the Strathmore Hill. A car hit it, knocked it down, just in case nobody knew what that was
I
about.
saw that, I was like, I was impressed that a car could knock it down. But the car would come off worse than the light pole, but
Maybe it did.
Maybe.
who's to say? Maybe they were driving it.
One thing I would say is, does that include the installation and connection of said pole?
Yeah, I will include the entire bill for it.
Okay, and the reason I asked is because I noticed that when I looked at it, the thing had ripped the wires out, so it's
Yeah.
going to take a little bit of work to reestablish its electrical connections.
Yeah,
So you're not gonna make Phil reinstall it?
Not this time.
I remember when they were installed, they were gonna install just plain old aluminum poles, and we, the town, paid to have them anodized in that green paint, and I don't know what, I think it was done in Baltimore somewhere.
There's a lot of specs on the paint.
Yeah. Okay, good,
Paint specs.
good, good.
And we have the light pole
Yeah, yeah,
specs on
yeah,
it, so
good,
it's good.
okay.
Yeah.
Great,
Good files on the server on that one, so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
good. Got something.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Okay, next on the agenda. I hate to even say it.
Ending with a whimper rather than a bang.
This is the council member
This is
resignation.
my council member resignation, and I submit this letter stating, "Dear Mayor and council members, I hereby tender my resignation as a council member on the Garrett Park Town Council, effective as of the close of business of the council meeting tonight. I am grateful for the opportunity to have served the town of Garrett Park, and I have enjoyed working with you and our hardworking town staff for the betterment of our community. Very truly yours, Jane Davenport McClintock."
Well, I'd like to thank you, Jane, especially for all the work you've done for us, and, I'm gonna miss you greatly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been an honor and a privilege.
Thank you. Same here. Anybody else?
I would second that. It's been an
Yes.
honor really working with you on a lot of things.
Really enjoyed working with you, it's been great.
Thank you. It's very bittersweet for me. I wish I had the capacity to continue, but I do think that it's time to let someone else take up this opportunity and serve the town. So.
No, maybe we'll see you again sometime in the future,
Oh, you
far
will
future.
Get rid of
I don't-
me. It'll
but that's
be
a
like
nice-
bad penny.
Well,
That's a nice segue into the next action item, or item. Thank you to Jane. I'd like to direct this now to the council.
What?
Next item?
So we, for remaining councils by the town charter, we're required to, I thought it was to appoint, but it says elect in there, a replacement council member for somebody that's leaving. So we had some discussions, we had a session to talk through. We also put out a second request for any interested candidates. We got, I think it was 5 or 6.
5.
Really just fantastic options. In the end, we ended up selecting, I think we are required to literally, or I don't know if we really are required to say who the appointed member is.
Yes.
Well, you're going to
Yeah.
vote, right?
Yeah. So you can tell I wasn't prepared to. So we could just go ahead and.
By
Yes, I
majority.
would think so,
Sure.
yeah.
So I guess I could start of the candidates that submitted information. My support was for Jerry Lee Bennett to take that seat.
As was mine.
Agreed.
And I was with Donna.
Okay.
So we had 3, a majority of 3 supported Jerry Lee for that seat.
Okay, wonderful. So we have Jerry Lee Bennett, would you honor us by coming up and taking the oath of office?
Where do you want me to go? Right.
Jerry Lee, why don't you first just give the full name and your address, and then we'll step over here.
My name is Jerry Lee Bennett. I live at 10806 Keswick Street, and thank you for the honor.
All right, we've done this different ways. Since it's just you, I will read and then you repeat. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, keep up, and so you, I'll share this with you. So
Thank
can
you.
go with it. And we'll start with your name. So I, and hand up. I, Jerry Lee Bennett, do swear that I will support. Do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. Constitution of the United States. And that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland.
And that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland.
And support the Constitution Constitution and laws thereof, and support the Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of council member of the town of Garrett Park, according to the Constitution and laws of the state. Thank you. All right. You are. Okay, and we're going to have you come over here and sign this. Oh, thank you. Okay. So, you may take a seat. You are a member, and if you would just go ahead and sign your name and your sign forward.
Congratulations on board.
The budget implications of all of the stormwater work, do we know what that is?
Looking forward to it. Yeah, should be good.
Well, the
Would
estimate,
you sign
here's
that
where
too?
it gets messy. Is this disagreement?
Just want to remind everybody, just before I hit the adjourn, that we are meeting in November on November 18th because of the Veterans Day holiday being on the 11th. I'll just remind everybody of that, okay? All right. Without any further ado, no more discussion?
Question.
Yeah.
Do we
Yes.
have somebody that's going to take over as the council member of the Arboretum Committee? Or we just put it on our to-do list?
I would imagine at this point in time right now that Jerry Lee is taking over what Jane has done. We can still discuss this later on. Okay? All right. All right. Meeting is adjourned. If you'd all like to stay and have a little cup of champagne or sparkling wine, I invite you. This is not only for Jerry Lee's benefit, but also to recognize the milestones that we have reached with the Safe Routes to School sidewalk project.